Hello, all you beautiful people. This is Intentional Healing, and I am Nicole Bridger. And today, I want to talk about your beliefs around your period, around your moon cycle, around your menstruation, and the phases of that within the month, and also the phases you go through in life as a woman. I know for me, when I got my period, no, my mom had never talked to me about it, and I instantly felt like it was something that wasn't talked about, that I should deal with silently. And there was definitely this kind of shame around it. Now, bless my mom, she's beautiful and loving, but that's how she dealt with it. Her mom died when my mom was only 12, and nobody showed her how to deal with it, and I think she probably, maybe it never dawned on her to talk to her daughters about it, or she just didn't know how. And so when I got mine, I remember I have an older sister, so I went and stole some pads from her and hid it. And my family was going swimming a few days later, and I said I couldn't go, and my mom was giving me a hard time, and she said, why? And I said, because I have my period. And she said, oh. And that was it. There was no other kind of conversation about it. No conversation around getting your period, around having sex for the first time, around childbirth. So now I am a mother to a son. He's now 10, and I've been a single mom with him pretty much since the beginning, and so we're very close. And I have, on the other hand, always talked about things with him and been really open and sharing, and he probably knows more about menstruation than even most kids his age. So I want you to take a moment right now, because that was really important for me to break the stigma, break the circle of there being any sense of shame around having a period and the menstruation cycle, because it's a part of life. It's how each one of us came into the world, and nothing to be ashamed of. And perhaps the more and more that we understand it and embrace it, then the less shame that there naturally is around it. I was so fortunate recently. I have a gorgeous, gorgeous friend here who holds new moon women's circles in Bali. And the last one that we attended, to my surprise, it's always a surprise, was all about women's cycle. She has spent almost a year really researching the different cycles and things that we are going through, different traditions, from First Nations cultures to even the Red Tent. I'm sure many of you have read that book. So different philosophies and traditions around the women's cycle that are like forgotten wisdoms, and how connected we are to the moon, to the cycle of the moon, to the seasons. and to deepen that understanding so that we can flow through the phases with more openness and understanding, and really take advantage of the phases, because they're not happening for no reason. They are happening so that we can have a deeper experience of life. So I'm going to talk about two parts. One is the cycle of your menstruation, the monthly cycle, but then also the phases of life as a woman. So first of all, understanding that you feel differently as a woman depending on which phase of your moon cycle you are in. When you have your period, when you are bleeding, she related it to like a winter time, a time for rest, a time for hibernation, a time for inner reflection, perhaps solitude. And in our culture, we are really taught to do, and set a schedule and keep to it, and not really listen, that there's a kind of weakness behind listening to what your body needs in any given moment. And what I want to kind of talk about today is how to listen, how to honor yourself. And if in those days, so today is the second day of my heavy flow of my period. And so yesterday and today, I didn't go surfing, and I rested, and I walked with the dogs, and I didn't go exercising. I did cook, because for me that feels nurturing. But I was aware of not pushing myself, and just being more gentle. So that's the week, let's say, when you're bleeding. Then the next week, my beautiful friend referred to as kind of like the springtime of your moon cycle. And this is a time when you start to feel more energetic and more playful. A great time for creative ideas, to experiment, to start budding like little flowers, ideas and inspirations, to listen to those, perhaps try new things. And the week after that, she referred to it as your summer. And your summer is when you're really energized, and perhaps you're really taking in the fruits of your labor. Because if you look at each cycle as a period to reflect and heal and work on things every month, then the summer of your cycle, that week, is a time to really celebrate and feel energized, and maybe you feel more like going and seeing people or dancing or having dinner parties, and just listening to that and allowing the ideas that you were budding the week before to really come into fruition. The following week, referred to as the fall. And this is a time to start turning inward. For me, that week before my period begins can really feel like there's a lot of stuff that wants to come up. This is the time of your PMS, which for a lot of us has a really bad kind of stigma around it, bad rep. Like, oh, that's when we're crazy, and uncontrollable anger or whatever, and emotions that arise. And all that is a time to allow the stuff to come up that needs to come up. And yes, it might be uncomfortable. And yes, it might not look very pretty. But instead of being annoyed at yourself or feeling shame that you have your PMS, that you're feeling more emotional, allow yourself that time to reflect and go, okay, there's something here for me. There's something here for me to look at, to work on. What is it right now that I am working on? Perhaps you want to journal more, reflect more, work through some stuff, have some difficult conversations, but just notice the feelings that are arising, because it's a gift. It's a gift to have this stuff come to the surface so that it's not suppressed. And the more that you allow the gifts of your cycle to help you grow and learn, the more graceful the cycle can be. The more graceful you can be as you move through the 4 phases of your cycle. So just like, cleaning can be mucky, allow that sort of mucky, hard work time to happen so that you can enjoy the next phase. And if you have done the work in that fall time, then as you move into the first day of your period, which for a lot of us can sometimes really feel like a sense of relief. We felt it coming and building, and there's a lot of sort of pressure. As soon as our period arrives, there's a kind of letting go that happens, and we move into the next phase of the winter of our menstrual cycle, where we can rest, reflect, and nurture. The other thing that I want to talk about are the phases that you go through in womanhood. She spoke about there being the phase of when you get your first period, the first time you have sex, the first time you give childbirth, and when you go through menopause. And you can reflect on how you are feeling depending on where you are in that cycle of life, leading up to getting your first period. How did you feel about it? Perhaps you have daughters that are in that phase of life. Are they excited? Are they feeling worried? Is it going to hurt? Is this going to be a drag? Am I still going to be able to do the things that I love doing, swimming and sports? And begin to understand the conversation that you're having around it, and how can you start to turn it around to being something as a beautiful part of life, something to be celebrated, to be honored, something really special. And what about the first time you had sex? For some of us, it was a beautiful time, and for some of us, it wasn't. And to just allow whatever feelings are around that. And whether you have daughters or sons, talking to them about what they hope for their first time as they enter into being sexually active, and honoring it. Many of us are peer pressured into having sex before we're ready. And encouraging young people to listen and honor themselves. And then into childbirth. And what was that experience like for you? Or what are your hopes and dreams for that phase of your life? Honoring your body, thanking your body. And if your body isn't working the way that you perhaps hoped it would, loving into that. Really loving into your body just as it is. Not making it wrong. And making peace, perhaps even mourning what you thought that phase of your life might look like. And finding the gifts in how it has happened. And then menopause. Our society has kind of been getting it wrong a little bit around aging. As we age, we have the opportunity to become wise. And this phase of our lives can be a really beautiful one if we are in flow and accepting of it. But if we resist it, if we make aging wrong or bad, or fear that we are becoming irrelevant or unuseful, then we won't be able to move through that passage with grace. And noticing the beliefs that you are holding on to yourself around the different phases of life. Loving your body as it goes through the phases. There's nothing wrong about going through the phases of life. And to think that our body is meant to stay in an early stage of life just doesn't make sense. Thanking your body, thanking the experiences that you've had. And as you enter into menopause, or perhaps you already have been in menopause, really, again, allowing yourself to take in the gifts that come from that phase of life. You have so much to share with those around you. So I hope, this is a brief conversation on something that we could talk about for hours, but I just wanted to start opening the conversation around our periods and the phases of being a woman, and to start asking yourself, what are the beliefs that you are holding on to that aren't serving you? And what kind of beliefs do you want to have? What conversations do you want to have? What experience do you want to have as a woman moving through the cycles? And how can we support one another in that journey? Thank you so much for listening. Have a blessed day.